even compress these bad boys. Oh yeah.
What was that?
Damaged parts because you pushed it too far. It's the case of custom making something, I guess.
Fail.
They fail. You know what I mean? They're a bearing, they're not a bush.
Yep.
That shock will not handle.
The engineering that Ford has put into those shocks, hours and testing and everything, and then for someone to go and put a strut spacer in the front of it.
It had a pretty hard life, I imagine.
Very
you
hard
probably
life.
haven't treated it the best.
Yeah.
So
all the trips that we've done, Simpson Desert.
he's actually going to get less out of it. Well, not too bad.
Now, here's a couple of handsome young men. By all appearances, they seem to be strong young boys, but they're struggling to walk up the street. You know why? Because their pants are around their knees.
Hey guys, so we're down here in Sydney. We're at Solve Off Road. I'm here with Nick, one of the owners of Solve Off Road. The shocks in the F-Truck. We need to do a bit of a tune-up. The shocks haven't failed yet. I've had no issues with this suspension that I've had in the F-Truck. Got about 100,000 Ks on them so far. Nick's going to talk us through why should we service these shocks, what we should look for on our shocks, especially the Fox versions, because these guys do import a massive amount of Fox shocks into the country. And essentially, what's the serviceability on these things? When should we service them? And how should we test if the bushes are gone and things like that? So let's get into it, Nick.
Yeah, that's it. So look, Fox shocks, awesome product. We love them because they last so long. But in saying that, they work hard. So anything that works that hard needs a bit of love. So you saying you got about 100,000 on these
Yeah, about
things?
100,000 on them.
So they've probably had a pretty hard life, I imagine.
Very
you probably
hard
haven't treated it, and they'll do that, they'll cop it, but they need the love on the other end.
Yeah,
so
100%.
100,000 Ks, you've stretched it, you've maxed it out, which is awesome to see. There's, you know, you're looking for leaks, you're looking for damage on shafts, things like that. You'll know when a Fox shock leaks. It's not a little bit of a weep around the shaft. That's common. That's the oil around that shaft lubricating seals. When a Fox shock leaks, it comes out under some decent pressure, 200 psi behind it, and it's a spectacular kind of show.
Yeah, so you're definitely going to know when something's wrong.
You're going to know about it. We got nothing wrong here. Everything looks really clean. We're going to check the bushes. We're going to check the shafts out, make sure everything's nice. Then we'll put new seals, new oil in it, and you're good to go. That's another new set of shocks.
Yep.
So, assuming everything's done well for the 100,000 Ks you've had it for, mate, there'll probably be seals, oils, and some bushes maybe to touch. For the average guy doing a lot of road Ks, driving around town, happily stretch them out to that sort of 90,000, 100,000 K mark, depending on your shock. The 2.0 a little bit less, the 2.5 a little bit more because it can cop a little bit more.
Yep.
For the guys that are abusing them in their Ford Rangers, their Hiluxes and stuff like that, I love to see them in earlier, a little bit earlier, depending on the usage. Once again, you know, between 60 to 80,000. Throw us a new set of seals, new bit of oil in it, maybe a bush or two, mate, you're good to go again for another 60, 70, 80,000 Ks depending on your usage.
Yep. So what would you say, why should you service them? Like, why wouldn't I just run them till they're dead?
Well, that's it. You've paid good money for good shocks,
Yep.
and there's a reason for that. One of the reasons is exactly that. We can do the service, and we can keep them going for another
lifespan again.
And exactly right.
Yep.
We've had multiple guys in here with, you know, they've moved the same set of shocks from 3 PX Rangers.
Yep.
You know what I mean? He hasn't had to buy a suspension kit. He's just put the same set of shocks in with a service in between, and away he goes. He's been really happy with it. But the shock can do it if you treat them right, and you want to get that out of them. You're good to go. Whereas with the other brands of shocks out there, they're not designed to do that, and they're designed to be replaced. You get to 100,000 Ks on your average shock that's done some hard work, it's not doing much now. It's replacement time and go again. And you won't notice that until you do that replacement and you go, oh, okay, my shocks are working again. So that's why we do it, because you've paid the good money, get the life out of them.
And so you guys do a lot of custom setups with the suspension and with the Fox stuff for different vehicles, depending on what the application is. And to be able to take that from vehicle to vehicle as you go down, you know what you're getting then. If you buy a new Ranger and you want to swap your suspension out, you kind of know what you're going to get in your truck at that stage. So how long would you service like a set of shocks for before you would replace them? Or it's pretty much in something major fails, like a bore or a shaft?
Yep.
Or
yeah, that's it. Like it comes down to the shock.
Yeah.
If they've been looked after and serviced regularly like that, we've had shocks in there that have been serviced 4 times, 5 times.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Especially on a lot of Jeep guys that do churn through their Jeeps, or they change them out, or they make changes to them. We do a service on it at the same time. Yeah, 4 or 5 times on that 50, 80, 100,000 K. That's a lot of life on a shock. And you start to see that wear in there, and it's that wear on the internal, inside of the bore there that you kind of start to pick up on, or it might be other stuff, but most parts are replaceable too. So yeah, that's when it gets to that point where you go, okay, it's time for a new set.
Time for new ones.
Yeah, but unless something drastically goes wrong, you're good to go for a long time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't think that they can, once their shock's done, that's kind of it. But again, I've made other videos on this in regards to when you spend a good amount of money on a set of suspension, and I've been around racing my whole life, and I know what cheap suspension does, and I know what expensive suspension does. And the way this truck rides, it's like it's got internal bypass, this thing. It just floats. I was a little bit hesitant to service the shocks in case it does change the ride or anything like that. Would that have an impact on when you buy a shock? And obviously it's going to settle to its point. Obviously the spring rate and all the rest of it's going to settle to a point depending on the vehicle's weight. Should that be anything that I'd be concerned about, that it changes the ride at all?
No, look, it's not going to, it might bring that ride back to how it was a little bit earlier.
Yep.
And it probably has changed a little bit during the course of that 100,000 Ks. There's no denying that.
Yep.
It's not going to revert it back to a brand new shock.
Yep.
The shims in there have been doing their work. We check the shims over. Shims have a tendency they can crack. On a race shock, we'll pull those shims, we'll bend them, we'll put new ones in. On your road car, we're not going to do that. We're trying to keep it to that affordable, sensible value for money point. So we don't do that, but we check the shims. We make sure there's no cracks in them, things like that. So then the spring that you've got, that's going to stay as well, because it's doing its job, it's holding the car up. We don't need to change it out. So that sort of side of the ride quality isn't going to change. There may be a slight change in the fact that it's got new oil, new set of seals in it, and it'll sort of settle itself back in, and it should be pretty much bang on where you had it. Yeah.
So I've got Trev down here with me. So once Nick's gone, Trev, we could just get some of these nice shocks and stick them in the back of the truck. So Nick's brought us up into his big Fox storage room. Check out all these boxes of amazing pieces of engineering and technology, and there's so much that goes into shocks, isn't there?
Yeah, there's a lot in it. It becomes a bit of a minefield, to be honest with you, once you start. The different combinations and setups for each car. That's one thing we're trying to get right, because it's never been quite right in Australia, you know what I mean? It's always kind of been a work in progress, so that's what we're doing. This is all our working stock. So basically the shocks come in, they go into the shock room, get built how we want to kind of build them, new part numbers into this room, and then try to get them out to customers. So getting that process down pat and getting the stock levels to a point that works is our big thing at the moment. And
yeah, constant balancing act between what you're selling a lot of, what volumes of like the new Ranger, what volumes you're going to have for that. And I guess with Fox being like a US company, they're very focused on their market.
If you're buying a Fox product from Solve, it isn't what was on the shelf. 99% of the time we've got some changes made, and we're trying to really hone in on those changes now to get it right. We've developed the next gen Ranger shock for ourselves.
Okay.
That's our setup, our shock, how we wanted it. We've made parts in Australia to make it work for our car here.
Okay, yeah.
So, and we're going to keep building on that. Once we've got it in a car, the development that we're going to put into that whole car is going to be pretty cool too.
And you've just got your next gen Ranger to start development on that now?
That's it, yeah. We've had a few cars come through that we've just played with just to get our head around stuff while we're waiting for ours to get in. We've got that now. Spending a bit of time in it, just stock. I want to see what that car's like stock, and it's been really good. So we've got a big road ahead of us to try and make sure that we do that car justice. But I think we will. We'll get some good lift out of it. We're going to get some good tyre combinations that work with that lift to make sure the guys out there that want their 35s can fit their 35s. But that's going to be a big one for us, and we're going to put a lot of time into it. So yeah, and we're going to get it done the way we want, and all the options out there for the workshops that want to fit that stuff as well. So
okay, so you guys are importing directly from Fox to here. So you are a big retailer here in Australia.
Yep. Yeah.
What sort of volumes are you guys doing of shocks like?
Oh, look, it varies based on what we can get out of Fox.
100%.
1 month, they'll be on top of things and they can throw us a couple of 100,000, and the next month it's not there. So it sort of varies. And it also varies depending on what cars are coming out.
Yep.
And what cars Toyota says you're not allowed to order at the moment. So we'll vary stuff based on that. But the hard part with Fox is every order for the last
What? Telephone call. Yeah.
What are you doing in there?
Who's this?
This is Detective Sergeant Eugene Moretti, asshole. Don't believe me? I'm looking you right in the eye. Right now I can see it.
Who is it? Cops.
That's good. That's real life. That's what happens. Every order for the last 12 months. Every order since 2020 is 12 months. It's a 12 months.
Okay,
yeah. You're 12 months out. So we're ordering 12 months away. And Fox has done a really cool job at sort of trying to catch back up on that. And I think they really have.
Yep.
So we're hoping that starts to shrink down. So it'll be good.
So obviously you got a lot of stock here. What's the main thing you're being requested for right now? Is it Ranger? Or is that like, or Jeep?
Yeah,
or...
annoyed Ranger customers that can't get shocks for their car yet.
Yeah,
That's
probably.
number one. So
Take it easy on him.
Yeah,
right?
we'll get there. Give us a chance. We'll get there. I want to get it right, not wrong.
Yeah.
Where are they? Choose between one life or the other.
So that's probably our number one focus.
Yeah.
But the biggest calls at the moment are still your D-Max and your Hilux. They're the biggest ones at the moment.
Yeah, okay, rightio.
That's it. So 300 series really hasn't scratched the surface. We haven't had much on that. I think the Hilux and D-Max popularity, as always, Ranger has been waiting for this next gen. You know what I mean? And it's a cool car, so it's going to be really good. It's going to be good to build, good to drive. Everyone's going to love it. So we're going to be doing lots of work on that one and really make something of it.
Okay. Do you do much with Raptor shocks and servicing on the Raptors?
Yeah, we do servicing and stuff, and I've had a few different setups. I don't like doing lifts on that car. It's a bypass shock.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, that's it. So we didn't dive into it heaps deep. I don't have machining facilities that I want to be able to do what I really want to do with that car.
Yep.
So we're working on something now for this new one. I've actually got one downstairs that we've been tinkering with a little bit. Yeah, that's it. It's going to be a ways off, because that's a complicated car with a lot of complicated stuff going on.
100%.
We've worked with all that side of the smart shock technology before, but in the side-by-sides.
Yep.
So we've worked with it in both the Polaris and in the Can-Ams. Bench lift isn't going to make that car better.
No.
You know what I mean? We want to make that car better with the correct poundage for the guys that are changing their cars setup based on weights and stuff like that, and getting the valving to... just getting improvement on valving.
100%.
And to find that with a smart shock's not easy. So we're going to look into it. We're doing some stuff on it now. We want to make a better run of that model Raptor than we did with the first one, because we didn't put a lot of focus on it. So that's what we're going to try and do over the next sort of 12 months.
And just from your point of view, the engineering that Ford has put into those shocks, on what caliber do you think that is, that the amount of hours and testing and everything, and then for someone to go and put a strut spacer in the front of it and think that that's gonna make it like
it's if you get shocks and you know what you're doing with them and you see that, you cry.
Yeah, 100%.
Don't do that. Don't do it.
I see on the Raptor pages, I see the strut spacers on the Raptor pages, and I just
they might not be doing the right thing for that shock or that car.
depending on what they're doing
It is their
with
car.
Yeah.
And look, I got to give credit to a lot of guys. They do a lot of work on cars for a specific reason, and a lot of guys do a lot of work.
I put spacers in my Ranger. I learnt my lesson.
Yeah.
I pulled CVs
That's
out.
it, yeah,
100%.
that's it.
So we were all going to learn our lessons and figure out that. And now me learning so much about shocks and having conversations with Nick here, and I've had a lot of experience with Bryce Menzies and the Fox guys over there when we did his jump. is that just understanding how they work and what you should and shouldn't do.
Yeah.
There's so much to learn about shocks, and it just becomes so interesting when you understand the internal components, different styles and types.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's a hard one. And in the car world, it's the racing world seems like it's another level, but it's really not. The car world is just as complicated trying to get it right,
Yeah.
because the range of work that car does is actually greater. You jump in a race car, it races, you can set a car up to
Yeah,
race.
that's all it does. It
I
just
don't
races.
give a shit how well it
Yeah,
rides
yeah.
right now, buddy. Just, you know what I mean? Whereas, you know, the bloke that's got to go to work on Monday, Tuesday to Friday, and then go wheeling on the weekend, and he wants to abuse his car because he's that guy.
Yep.
That's a hard setup. You know,
Yep.
it's hard to find, and I think that's why I do like the Fox stuff. The compromises in the Fox gear, it minimises all those compromises, and we
Yep.
can kind of find a happier place. And I think that's why it works. You know what I mean? So, and yeah, strut spaces, we avoid them. There's nothing wrong with the guys that want to lift their cars for the purpose of the lift, and they want the look, and they're chasing that.
Yeah, and it's usually just that nose down look that no
Yeah,
one likes.
that's it.
They're like, I just want a cheap option just to pick the front up. I drive to work every day. I don't do hard wheeling.
Yep.
I'm probably not going to jump my Raptor. So yes, it
As
probably
long
could
as-
work for
and
those.
It's horses for courses.
100%.
And it's, you know, it's value for money. I don't want to put a set of Foxes in that guy's car. I'm
Yep.
not helping him. I'm not doing
Yep.
the right thing. But the guy that wants to use his car, yeah, let's get some Fox in
Yeah,
there
100%.
and get it working for you. So that's the thing.
Cool. Well, he's got plenty of stock, so if you guys
Yeah.
need Fox shocks, give Nick and the boys down here at Solve a call. I'll have everything in the description for you guys to get in contact with these guys. And you don't just do shocks, You do
Nah.
all sorts of modification, electrical work, suspension fit outs.
That's it.
What else do you do? Bar work.
You name it, we do it. Like, I like to sort of segment the shop out a bit. We've got, you know, your Fox sort of sections up here, which is your selling suspension.
Yep.
Then they've got the downstairs is the workshop. That's your bar winch suspension at one end of the shop, and that's your big fit
Big
outs,
builds,
big
yep.
builds at the other end. And it ranges from, you know, a set of spotties getting put on one day, and the car at the other end's getting a 79 series with a 200k fit out done to it, or whatever, or new tray, new canopy, and the whole thing. So everything, one
Can
side to the other.
definitely sort anyone out. That's for
That's
sure.
it. We'll get you sorted out.
Right, Nick. So we're in the, what do you call this room?
The shock room, I guess.
Shop
Yeah,
room,
yep.
service room,
It's the air conditioned room.
climate control.
Yeah, that's it, mate.
Like, what are you going to do with my shocks? So we're going to tear them out of the truck. Boys are going to bring them in here.
They'll get cleaned, so
Yep.
nothing comes in here dirty. That's the main thing. So pulled out of the truck, clean them downstairs. They'll get a good wash, bit of a degrease. Get them up here. We'll get them on this bench. Get them stripped. Check them over for damage. That's the main thing. Because
Okay.
if I find damage, we've got to work out what we're doing. Are we replacing? Are we finding new shafts? Are we doing repair on shafts? Things like that. So
Yep.
if we find any damage, that's what we do. Sort that bit out first. Then we get them completely stripped down, oils, all that kind of stuff, cleaned, 100% clean. They go back downstairs into a wash bay to get cleaned.
Yep.
Then back up here and rebuilt and gassed up and back on the car, mate.
Back in the truck and
That's it.
ready for another 100,000 Ks.
Yeah, yep, that's it.
So what's probably the worst thing you've ever seen come through in here?
Oh, yeah, poor maintenance. You
So
know,
people like me.
hopefully not.
Yeah, hopefully not.
Yeah, look, the main thing that happens is in our 2.0 range is that people don't replace the strut bearings.
Yeah, yeah, I've
Fox,
seen them fail.
They fail. You know what I mean? They're a bearing, they're not a bush. I think the key with that is a bush won't last.
Yep.
That shock will not handle. I think I've machined up a few lower feet to take a bush.
Yep.
We've used a few different brands of bushes. I won't say which ones, and we're looking at maybe 10,000 Ks. The
Oh,
shocks
wow.
are just working that much.
Every time you drop the oil, you got to replace bushes.
Well, yeah, pretty much. That's where we
Wow.
got to, because I wanted to try and find a happy medium between
Yeah.
that bearing getting a bit noisy and what can I do with a rubber bush. So we stuck with the bearings. You know, I'll get some guys get 100,000 Ks out of a bearing, and you go, okay, cool. And you get some guys that get 40.
Yep.
You know, the bloke that runs down the beach every second day, every weekend, washes his car, gurneys, gets it in there, you know what I mean? That guy,
He's
going to
thorough.
get, yeah, he's thorough. He's actually going to get less out of it because he's getting the big use, he's getting the gritty grime, the sand into that, and when you gurney them, it pushes it back in.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So the guy that never touches that bottom bearing probably gets the most out of it.
So yeah, guys like me that I just left mine and just drove it and yeah, obviously look after my truck and clean it and all the rest of it. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a winch. You don't gurney a winch every week, do you? You don't do it. So
Yep.
I think that's probably one of the keys. But it's usage. You know what I mean? If you're going to use it and abuse it, expect to want to replace those parts more just to keep on top of things. And that's about it. If you let it go too far, it destroys the shock, not just the bearing. Whereas if you start to hear the squeak in those bearings, you flick it, put a new one in, go for the same amount of Ks again, you're good to go.
Yeah. And so, mate, with servicing your shocks, is that like a cost-effective thing instead of buying just a new shock?
Yeah, 100%. You've spent good money, like I said earlier. You've spent good money on Fox. Servicing is cost-effective as long as you're looking after your gear. If you've had a major failure, or if you've left something like a lower bush just destroy and disintegrate the shock, yeah, it's probably going to start not panning out better. We have that happen every now and then, and we've got to kind of come up with the best solution. And if the guys have bought shocks off of us, we make sure we get them sorted and get them looked after. But sometimes it's just a case of there's too many damaged parts because you've pushed it too far. Let's just get a new one for you.
So if you were to say, if I bought a set of shocks and I ran them for 100,000 Ks, came back to you, everything looked pretty sweet, what sort of percentage versus the cost of the shocks will you be ballpark looking at? Would it be 10% of the shock cost, 20%?
No, you're still looking up there. You're still looking in that sort of 40% range.
Okay.
Depending on how many parts we're changing out.
Yep.
You got to kind of look at it from a, you know, you're not spending 50% on a new set of shocks, or if you do, it's still only 50% on another set of Fox shocks,
not
which
100.
is pretty, exactly. And you're getting a good set of shocks back in the car. The cost of the ins and outs of getting the shock in and getting it back out, getting it in and getting it out and back in,
Yep.
the labour side of it, you're paying for that no matter what. You put a new set of shocks in, the old ones are coming out, new ones are going in. So that's not worried about. So definitely works out. It can get up there on parts, but yeah, if you're sort of in that 30 to 40% range, you're pretty sweet. And that depends on what shock you got too.
Okay.
Yeah, coilovers versus just a straight smooth body or something like that. It does vary. So.
Okay, cool, awesome. Well, the boys are going to pull out, well, I'm going to get my truck in the workshop first. I'm going to rip the wheels off it. I'm going to pull all the shocks out, bring them up here into the service bay and smash out, see what's wrong with these things, what we need to repair, how much, like how bad the oil is and all the rest of it. And yeah, boys are going to do that this week and pick up the truck next Friday, and hopefully we're all good and yeah, fingers crossed.
Should be
So,
right. Yeah.
Can't wait, mate. Can't wait to pick it up.
You've looked after it, I'm sure.
Jesus.
Got no gas. What the fuck?
Who broke it? I'm not mad. I just want to know. Tom?
Don't look at me. Look at Ben.
What? I didn't break it.
Huh, that's weird. How'd you even know it was broken?
There you go. There's your pressure. All of your pressures right there.
How good was that shot, Nick?
Yeah, we're doing a lot.
What, nothing?
Nothing. Yeah. No, it was still working. It's a box. It was still doing something. Just had the gas in the wrong spot. That's the quickest and easiest way to strip it down once it's done that. Okay, so we've got tyres, front coilovers out of the car, stripped down, and we're doing a bit of work on them, getting them cleaned up. One thing I wanted to note is, and show everybody what happens and explain the differences and why it happens. That's the lower bearing, so that's the bottom of the shock. That's the top bearing. You can sort of see the clear difference between the two. That one's quite a tight bearing still. This one here is loose. You can see the planet. That's both of them. Both of them are the same, and both the uppers are the same as well. One of the big reasons for this, well, the two big reasons for this. Bottom one sitting down the bottom, it's getting washed the most, getting the most amount of dirt in it. So they're going to get a bit crummy, earlier on. The main reason you'll see the lower bearing damaged, worn out, needing replacing a lot earlier than the top, and it's usually at least 2 to 1. If not, it can be even more so, 3 to 1. They're basically carrying the load. By the time the load gets to the top bearing, the shock's done a whole heap of work at reducing it and absorbing all that energy, turning it into heat through the oil and through the shock, so that the top bearing doesn't cop as much. So that's why we see those big differences between the two. That still looks okay. He's done a lot of Ks in this car. He wants it good and clean. We're going to change both out now, make sure they're good for another 50, 60, 70,000, whatever he chooses to do. Even when we do that, if he does the service earlier, we might be able to miss those top ones on the next service. So that's the big reason. That's why when you come in, you'll see that sometimes the difference between your lowers and your uppers, and a lot of people do ask the question.
Right, I'm back down to pick up the F-Truck from Nick here at Solve Off-Road. Mate, we tore apart all the shocks. What did you end up finding that was damaged?
Well, look, it wasn't huge, but there was some personal abuse in there.
My bad.
Yep, no, look, rear shafts.
Yep.
Your rear shafts copped a bit, but we'll get them. We've got them fixed. We've got some boots on there now, so you're not going to damage them anymore. Just look after that stuff. Yep. The only other thing we found, which is super rare, I've actually not seen them on a 2.5 on a car, is your IFP on one of your front coilovers is kicked.
Okay.
And you can sort of see the scoring on there and whatnot, and it's been working on an angle and everything like that. That just caused the gas and the oil to mix up in the shock.
Okay, righto.
And cause a bit of cavitation and whatnot. But no other damage in the shock, everything else was Mickey Mouse. So
yep.
It was just a new IFP to make sure it's good and clean, and set of seals and away you go, mate. You're good to go.
Put it all back together.
That's it.
So what do you think would have caused that, or you just said you haven't seen one before?
Yeah, look, it's hard to sort of say exactly what's caused it. It hadn't happened long ago, because the damage wasn't extensive. You know what I mean? Potentially, it's dropped a bit of gas pressure. You do leak a little bit of gas over time.
Okay.
So if you reduce pressure on one side of that IFP, then the acting pressure on the other side can cause it to kick and not sit and work on level level plane there. So can do that to it. And could have just been that, and they were due. It hasn't happened. Like I said, it hasn't happened long ago because the damage is quite insignificant. So yeah. Yeah,
cool. Well, that's interesting. And just credit to the shocks, how good they were still performing damaged.
that's the bit I think that's the best part about them.
Yep.
And the worst part, because we get guys coming in and they're just going, oh, it's due for a service. I'm like, well, it was due 40,000 Ks ago.
Yeah, before you had that.
Yeah, but it was still working, you know what I mean? They were still doing their job to some extent, and like what you're thinking, working well.
Yeah.
And they weren't. So you'll probably even notice it, you know what I mean? By the time you get some temperature in them and get some drive time on the road you've been driving for a while, and you'll go, oh, yep, okay, that's a little bit different.
Yeah, I'm super interested to know if I actually do notice a difference with the shafts and stuff. Were they kind of peppered up from rocks and things like that?
Yeah, so that was your shaft damage. It had, just rocks had been sort of peppering it, and it's damaged the chroming on it and whatnot. So just,
Rechrome them,
get them repaired. They're Mickey Mouse.
Sweet.
You had a bit of that on the front as well, on some of the exposed shafts on the front. But look, everything else, or even the oil condition, it was still looking good. You know what I mean? It wasn't cooked oil, it wasn't burnt, nothing like that. All the seals in there were good, all the wear bands in there were good. So now they're all brand new. So yeah, you got a new set of shocks basically.
Awesome. And you were talking about when we were upstairs, you were talking about, when I was here last time, the bearings that are in the bottom of the shocks. How do the 2.5s in my truck, do they have a bearing in there?
Yeah,
or?
they got bearing. They got a COM10 bearing top and bottom.
Yep.
And yeah, same sort of story. They were worn. They were done for,
Okay.
but they weren't. They hadn't come apart. They hadn't started to fail or anything like that, which was good. So we caught them well in time. We did all 4 of yours because they've all done big Ks, so you're good to go. But yeah, that's how that works.
Yeah, sweet. So we should be good now. Got a Fraser trip coming up, so cool. No worries. No, mate, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
No
and yeah, so if you guys need your shocks done, if you got Fox shocks, come down to Nick. The guys can service them, fully rebuild your whole setup, so that way it's all plush, fresh, new again. And yeah, come and support a great Aussie business down here in Sydney. So
Thank you.
appreciate it, mate.
No worries.
Cheers. See you guys.